Hi guys, welcome to Sample Tools by CR2, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Melodic Tech House pack. I want to start today by showing you guys how to compress your drum bus properly. This is a question I get all the time and it's really important, and so many people do it wrong, which is normal. So let's just try and do it right, and I'll show you a few ways because there's not one right way. There's a few ways and it all depends on how you want to do it. So first things first, you've got to bus all your drums to one channel, okay, to one bus here. So I've got all my drums coming through here. I'm just going to play that to you now quickly. Now notice that how I don't have the kick going there, and that's one of the first mistakes that people make. They always put the kick into the drum bus. Now that's okay if you're doing kind of rock music, but what happens is the kick will set off the compressor loads in the drum bus, which means that every time the kick plays, the compressor will add that gain reduction, it will attenuate, and the drums will come down in volume. And you don't want that, right? Because you want to just be able to compress the kick and the drum separately so they're not affecting each other too much, and they're not interfering basically. So the drums are sounding quite good. They're all EQ'd. They actually have a little bit of EQ on the drum bus already, and this is just adding some sort of high frequencies. This is around 10,000 hertz, and this is a little bit around 3. So we'll just listen with this on and off. So not much going on there, but it's definitely opening it up a little bit. Now the drums actually sound quite controlled already, but maybe we could just bring them together ever so slightly more with a compressor. And we're going to have a look at a few different compressors. Now we're going to start with the most classic compressor for a drum bus, which is the Universal Audio 1176. Now Waves make a version of this. Logic has a version of this too. Which is this one here, the Studio FET. And there are a couple of other companies out of there. If you can get your hands on the sort of Waves one or the Universal Audio one, I would recommend it. They do sound fantastic, and they definitely are a little bit sort of better than the Logic one, but not massively so. And at the end of the day, it's how you use it, not the tool itself. So you could be using it wrong. It could be the best compressor in the world. It's never going to sound good. The other compressor we're going to have a look at is something called an SSL G-Bus, which looks like this. And I'll explain the difference between the two in a second. And we're going to use one final different compressor here called a Fairchild. Now, the main difference between all these compressors is their circuitry. You've got FET, field effective transistor. So this is quite fast, but it's got high distortion. Now, distortion is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be a really good thing. Then you've got the SSL, which is VCA, which is it's very clean, also very fast. And then you've got the Fairchild, which is a tube compressor. So it's got this really nice, warm sound to it, but it's quite slow. And I don't know if it's really going to work, for the drums. It's got a sort of slow attack and slow release. And you can change that, but not massively so. Now, usually I would go for this one or this one on drums. But we're going to try all three because I have a feeling we might be surprised by the tube sound. So first of all, let's work out how we're going to compress our drums. How much are we going to compress them? Well, it's all to taste, right? So here we've got input, which is essentially threshold. Here we've got threshold here on these two, but this one's called input. So the further you drive the input in, the more compression happens, the more gain reduction happens. You have to pull the output down. So let's get the right threshold in, and then let's match it with the output first. So when we turn the compressor on and off, it's exactly the same volume. So it's super important that you always match the output of the compressor after the threshold. In these compressors, we'll probably find it's the opposite. We'll pull the threshold down and we have to add makeup gain, whereas here we're increasing the input, but we have to decrease the output. The amount of compression is up to you, but just remember that you've got all your sounds here at once, so you probably want to affect them less heavily than you think. I'm kind of overdoing it here just so we can hear the effects of the compressor, and then we can always tail it back and reduce the input a little bit. So let's start with attack. Okay, now just on this compressor, so you don't get confused, 7 is fast attack, so that would be 5 milliseconds, and 1 is slow attack, so we could think of this as like 50 milliseconds. Okay, it's actually the opposite in this compressor. So try not to get that confused when you're using this one. And then on the release, 7 is fast release, and 1 is slow release. Okay, so we'll start with the attack. We'll leave the release where it is, and we'll go from fast to slow and fast to slow. Now notice when it's really fast how everything gets more compressed and we hear less punch, and when it's really slow we hear more punch and more of those kind of transients coming through. So we'll start in the middle, we'll go fast and then slow. So you can really hear the difference in what's happening to the sound. So when you are compressing, just overdo it and let your ears understand what's going on. Now, the fast compression is too fast. It crushes everything. It sounds kind of distorted. It's not very nice to listen to. But I think the slow compression is too slow. We do want some control of those drums. We don't want to let too many of those transients through. So I think we need to find somewhere in the middle. So I'm thinking probably around 3, but it also may be directly at midnight like it was before. So just off the center of midnight sounds good to me. Now the release I've always found is much easier than doing the attack. The release I always make it as slow as possible as I can first, so that's 1 on this compressor here, and then I dial it back in until I feel like I'm getting the life back of the sound, and you'll see what I mean. Slow release means basically once the volume has come down after the attack to, let's say, whatever it is, -3, -5, it's how long it takes to get back up. So if the release is really slow, basically it stays down then, it's basically just reducing the volume loads. Whereas if we make the release faster, then this is going to flick back up and it's going to pull back up the sustain of the sound and make things feel like they're slightly more in your face. So check this out. We're going to go really slow, really fast, and then I'm going to dial in where I think it should be. Okay, cool. So let's find a sort of medium ground. I'm going to start from slow and just dial it back in until I start to feel the kind of life back. I think it's probably going to be actually at the fastest at number 7, but let's have a look. definitely feels at the most comfortable at 7. I want the kind of tail of the sound to come through. I want it to feel punchy as well. Okay, so that's the 1176 set. I'm really happy with that. I think we're probably overcompressing it a little bit, but let's leave it at that. Okay, right, let's try and do exactly the same with this one here. And we'll try and get roughly 3 decibels of gain reduction, and then let's sort out the attack and release. Let's put the ratio at 4 as well, so it's the same as this one here. And that's it. Let's do it. So threshold down first. Let's add some makeup gain to make up for the volume that we lost. Let's decide on an attack speed. So we'll go from fast to slow. So 0.1 of a millisecond is way too fast and 30 is way too slow. Let's find the medium ground. Three milliseconds feels good. And then let's do release. We're going from 0.1 of a second to 1.2 seconds. We'll avoid the auto if we can. So we'll start slow. And then let's find a medium ground. Great. Okay, and last but not least, the Fairchild. Now, the Fairchild doesn't actually have a ratio option. It's about 3.1 to 1, but it is variable, so it does change depending on the input. So we'll just get 3 decibels of gain reduction with a threshold here, and then we've got these kind of different settings, and I think this is a slow attack, then slightly faster, slightly faster, slightly faster, and then this is really slow attack but really slow release, and then not so slow attack and really slow release. Okay, so we do know that we want a fast release. So it's worth, if you do get the Fairchild, look in the manual, but we'll just use our ears rather than our eyes. So I put the threshold all the way up, but it just needs a little bit more input to drive that threshold. Makeup gain is actually down here. Okay, and then let's try the different attack and release settings. You see how slow this one is? Look how long it takes to come back. So for me, it's either 1 or 6, I think, which are the best for this. I think 1 is better because it's got it's got the fastest release time, and the fastest release and slowest attack combo. So now that we've set up all our compressors, it's just about what tone are we after. So we've got a kind of dirtier, kind of distorted tone. We've got a kind of cleaner, brighter tone here. And then we've got a warmer, deeper tone there, okay? These are all really subtle differences, but the more you use compressors like this, the easier it is to understand. So let's start with the first one, and then we'll just keep flicking through. Okay, so far I think the Fairchild is too kind of deep and murky, and I don't really think it's adding to the drums what I would like. So it's going to be between the 1176 and the SSL G bus. I'm kind of leaning towards the G bus right now because it's making the drums a little brighter, but let's just have a listen again to both. I think the G bus is a winner. I think it's just keeping things nice and clean, nice and punchy. It's not over compressing them at all. This one just feels like it just feels a little dirty. I'm not super into it. I mean, maybe let's try it with a slower attack. See, now I like the 1176 more, and I always go for the 1176 in the end, weirdly enough. But that with that slower attack, letting through some more of those transients, it started to feel a little bit more alive, a little bit more like, yes, a cell, but it does have that added harmonic distortion, and I think that's exactly what those drums need. So, okay, guys, just a quick recap on everything. I've got 3 different compressors on the drum bus here. Remember not to send your kick to the drum bus. I've got an FET compressor, so kind of high distortion, really fast and aggressive. This one is also really fast. It's a VCA, but it's really clean. And this one is a tube compressor, which is quite slow and sluggish, but feels warm and deep. So remember, compressors aren't just about gluing your drums together. They're also about adding color and tone.
Remember, at Sample Tools by CR2, we also offer a mix and mastering service. Just head over to www.sampletoolsbycr2.com, click on the Mastering tab, and you'll find our range of services there.